Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack a really brilliant source today that breaks down something we literally use every single day, but probably never really think about. I'm talking about grammatical mood. It turns out the way you structure your verbs does a whole lot more than just follow some textbook formula. It actually serves as the ultimate architect of your writing's attitude. Let's jump right in.
So, did you know your sentences actually have an attitude? It's true. We usually just think of verbs as action words, right? Run, jump, think. But in reality, verbs carry distinct emotions. They can be bossy, they can be purely factual, or they can be totally grounded in wishful thinking. And the specific attitude you choose to express completely shifts the fundamental meaning of your sentence.
Here's a quick roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by looking at how verbs actually have attitudes. Then we'll move into the factual and bossy moods. And after that, we'll tackle the tricky subjunctive mood. Finally, we'll map out the rules and triggers before wrapping things up with an interactive grammar pop quiz.
All right, Section 1. Verbs actually have attitudes. Grammatical mood shows the writer's attitude toward what he or she is saying. I want to let that sink in for a second. Grammar isn't just about cold, rigid rules. It's a super dynamic tool. It's really about expressing a very specific posture towards your own words. Are you stating a hard fact? Are you making a demand? The mood you choose tells the reader exactly how to interpret your intent.
Moving right along to Section 2, factual and bossy moods. These are the two most common moods in the English language, and you definitely use them all day long.
So first up is the indicative mood, which basically just states an actuality or a fact. You can kind of think of this as your straightforward, factual friend. Then, in contrast, we have the imperative mood, which makes a request. That's your demanding, maybe even slightly bossy friend. They definitely look different, and they absolutely feel different.
Let's look at some examples. For the indicative, you might say, "We will go to see a movie this Sunday," or "I'll follow you." Just stating the facts, right? But watch how the whole vibe shifts when we go imperative. "Let's go to see a movie this weekend," or "Please stop bugging me." See? We just instantly turned mere statements into direct requests and commands. The entire attitude just changed.
Which brings us to Section 3, the tricky subjunctive mood. If the indicative and imperative are the everyday levels of English, the subjunctive is basically the complex boss level.
The subjunctive mood expresses a doubtful condition, something that is contrary to fact, and it's very often paired with an if clause. So the absolute most crucial point here is that phrase, contrary to fact. When you're talking about a wish, a doubt, or a hypothetical situation that isn't currently true, you are stepping right into the subjunctive mood.
And this brings us to a super common trap. Listen to this incorrect version. If I was you, I would take any offer. Honestly, our ears are so used to hearing that, right? People say it all the time. But here's the catch. Because I am not you, meaning this is a non-factual condition, the strict grammar rules demand the correct version, which is, if I were you, I would take any offer. That non-factual condition literally forces the verb to change. So, how do we know exactly when to change the verb? That brings us to Section 4, subjunctive rules and triggers. There are precise mechanics that govern these strange little verb shifts. What's really fascinating here is that certain verbs act almost like grammatical magnets. Whenever you use verbs like ask, recommend, suggest, wish, insist, order, commend, request, or demand, they automatically pull the following clause directly into the subjunctive mood. If you spot one of these triggers in a sentence, an alarm bell should immediately ring in your head, because a verb change is coming.
Let's break down exactly what those visual changes look like. For the present tense third-person singular, the subjunctive exception actually drops the s or es entirely. It sheds it completely so it matches the present tense of everything else. And then, look at the to be verb. In the subjunctive, it simply becomes be in the present tense, and it becomes were in the past tense, regardless of who the subject is. Whether it's I, you, he, she, or they, the past tense subjunctive of to be is always just were.
This brilliantly illustrates how dropping that tiny s or es based on our rules makes all the difference, especially in professional writing. The incorrect phrasing would be, our suggestion is that everyone on the team does the survey. Because suggestion is a trigger word, the correct phrasing drops the es, making it everyone on the team do the survey. Similarly, she recommended that each student takes a note actually becomes each student take a note. It might look slightly unusual to us at first, but it is grammatically flawless. All right, time to actually put this to the test.
Section 5, Interactive Grammar Pop Quiz. This is pulled straight from the source's quizzes, and I want you actively participating here. Let's see if you can beat the screen.
Okay, here's our first prompt. I insist that Jennifer blank her meal. The verb we need to use is finish. Look closely for the trigger word in that sentence. What should the correct form of the verb be? Go ahead, shout it out before I reveal it.
The correct answer is finish. If you got that, awesome job. The verb insist is a super powerful subjunctive trigger. So instead of saying Jennifer finishes, which is what we normally do for a third-person singular, we apply the rule, we drop that es, and we are left with simply finish.
Let's tackle the next challenge. She suggests that the office blank closed today. Our verb here is to be. We can clearly see the trigger word suggests. So how does the verb to be look in the present tense subjunctive?
The correct answer is simply be. Yep, instead of the indicative the office is closed, the subjunctive exception demands that the verb to be just becomes be. She suggests that the office be closed today. Excellent.
Okay, one last fill in the blank from the source. If I blank you, I would win the game. Again, the verb is to be. Pay really close attention to that if clause. This is that classic contrary to fact condition we talked about earlier.
The answer is were. Remember the rule. In the past tense subjunctive, the verb to be always becomes were, completely regardless of the subject. Because I am not you, it's a non-factual condition. Therefore, if I were you, I would win the game.
Let's take it to the final level with a multiple choice challenge. Take a really close look at these 4 options. Based on absolutely everything you've learned today about subjunctive triggers, if clauses, and verb form changes, I want you to spot the single grammatically flawless sentence among these 4.
And the winner is sentence number 3. If Jack were 17 years old, he would apply for the university. Because Jack is currently not 17 years old, it's a condition contrary to fact. Therefore, we use the subjunctive were instead of was. It perfectly applies the rule. Well, you've officially conquered the architect of attitude. But I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Now that you actually know these rules, what other hidden attitudes might your everyday sentences be hiding from you? I really encourage you to look closely at the emails you send and the documents you write today. Scrutinize your own grammar, try to spot those triggers, and just keep exploring the fascinating mechanics of the English language. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep on learning.